Hey guys, I'm going to share some ideas on combining multi-time frame analysis and order flow. I'm just going to be using TradingView here on S&P futures. So got a 15-minute chart here, 1-minute chart here, and then 15-second here. 15, I find this to be really good for seeing kind of like the intermediate time frame and trend and direction. This is kind of like, I find that this is the lowest time frame that kind of shows that intermediate level action. A lot of other traders have found this to be the case as well. The three that I like for intermediate the most are 15 minute, 30 minute, and 1 hour. So you could use any of those. 1 minute's pretty nice for seeing lower time frame structure. You can see when there's like a nice volume pop as well, or like a high volatility move. And then the 15-second is really good for entry charts and really zooming in. It can show some really nice structural things, or if volatility's high, it can show right when there's a break that's happening or something important in the order flow. You can also use tick charts as well. Yeah, so if we look back at this recent action, the 16th and 17th, when we had the all-time high, notice how we have this volume distribution up here at the highs. So once we broke down below that, now we have all of these long inventories trapped from this area. And since it was a very strong impulsive move down, we're often going to see some kind of reaction or rejection when we get near this area. And if we look left, I'm just going to compress the chart to make it more obvious. We can see we had a lot of touches, so the bottom of this extreme is near 61.15. And then we have a lot of touches 10 points below that, roughly at 61.05. Doesn't have to be perfect. You could draw it as 61.07 as well, or a little lower as well, like 04, 03. I like to put it at a 00 or an 05, increment whenever possible. It's like a psychological level, but sometimes they won't be on, it won't be like as ideal. So I did like 60.42 here. When I looked at the 45, it was just a little bit off. It was a little too high. 40 was slightly low. I was trying to align. Let's see. Yeah, we had like these lows and then this low here. So I was just aligning that because that came into play on Friday when it failed to hold prior day low. Yeah, so this was one of the clues. So notice how it goes and flushes these highs here. It's testing right into this extreme. It's not able to quite make it to that 61.15. It just comes right back down. And it kind of consolidates. And now it's back below VWAP here. So everything is looking like downside. And I had mentioned on Discord early that it's showing intent for 60.48 because I had that as a level. And then 42 as well. Because I wouldn't expect it to bounce right at 48. I want to see it flush. I was actually expecting a little bit more of a bounce and reaction. It did react at this 42 area on the 48 flush, but it didn't bounce much. And that's one of those key things that we always want to watch for. It's like, yeah, we got our bounce, but where is the other side stepping in at? Are they stepping in early after a really shallow bounce? It's only 10 points, or are they letting it run 30, 40, 50 points higher, or even all the way back up to here again? It became really clear that they were not allowing it to go back up. We're going to zoom in on these as well and see it was breaking below 42. But here's some little structural things. See how, 60, 80 here, we had some reactions on both sides, and then it flipped it during overnight and tested above shortly after Frankfurt Open, sold off on London Open, came back up in before pre-market, and it rejected before it even tested it again while it's still below VWAP. So that's pretty bearish. And we had this LVN, slow volume node confluence here, which is always nice. Yeah, the more you look at it, you'll notice the interplay between time frames and then volume profile and then just regular volume. I think a lot of people underestimate how powerful just plain old regular volume is, especially on lower time frames. I find it to be extremely powerful on the 1 minute and the 15-second. I don't really find it to be as great on like intermediate time frames, like the ones I was saying, 15-minute, 30-minute, 1 hour. A lot of those order flow imbalances get kind of scrubbed out and cleaned out on these time frames. So there might be like major spikes going on in here, like on 1 minute or 15-second, 30-second. But then when we look at the 15, it like doesn't look very significant, like anything's happening. They just kind of get wiped out. There's a bit of a spike here, but I found that they're not, the volume for the most part on these intermediate time frames, it tends to just, be pretty similar all the time. It starts really big on the open. We have this midday lull where it's really low, and then during the doldrums when institutions are at lunch, which is mostly between 11 to 12, and then a bit up until 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then we'll often get some volume coming in towards the end of the session as well. Yeah, so let me get on with some analysis. I'm doing a lot of rambling. I apologize. Yeah, so we want to look at how it reacts at these, priority low as well. But if it can't hold that, then it's very likely to test into the 40s because of all the structure and positioning and everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward here. Let me move these up a little bit. Yeah, so we can really clearly see the directionality, just nonstop red candles, and we're in pre-market right now. We're about to hit the open in a bit. And we've now tested, below priority low. It got a little bit of a reaction there. All right. So we're almost at the open. It was already flushing pretty hard in pre-market, so let me just adjust that. Yeah, so now we're at the open here. Yeah, so right at the open, on the 1 minute, we see these wicks above, and on the 15-second, it was showing signs that it's struggling, and then it's finding the highs a little bit lower, and then a little lower. And this is where we get a bounce off of around that 42 area. So we keep seeing signs of, a bid here. So this is where things were really interesting. We're testing into, that little opening area. Let me see. This is so that was like the opening 15 seconds. So we're testing into that opening 1 minute range. Let me zoom in just a little bit on it. Make this more clear. So we have this volume spike right into it. And we're not seeing any follow through. If this was strong volume that was showing directionality, we want to see that continuing. It immediately starts stalling out and it runs the high and then it moves down and it comes back up and it's not able to test it and sells down. It's not the end of it, but it's just something to, and then it tests right into it and rejects right off of that level right there. And so now we have another attempt, but now we're putting in another lower high here, and we're starting to put in lower lows. So it's like we got our bounce, but we're seeing signs that it's only around a dozen points. Their sellers are already starting to step in, and they're stepping in an area that makes sense. The open is always going to be a key spot to watch the market. There's a lot of volume down there, and we'll often see some sort of a reaction. Let me fast forward this now to get this going. And now, so I could have drawn, these lows as well here. This is going to be an area to break. So, this sequence right here, this looks, very bearish. We're constantly seeing sellers step in. But, this is where it really starts to get confirmed. We're seeing really strong volume coming in, and it's closing on its lows. Seeing it on the 1 minute as well, see the volume. So this is where I knew the long trade was pretty much dead. I was actually trading the bounce, but I bailed on any long attempts. This is where I see a lot of people get caught up, is they get really married to the idea of, this usually will bounce here, and, that's true, but we always have to manage expectations and what the other opposing side is doing. The opposing side in this case is telling us, we're not letting this thing go higher. Offers weren't pulling their offers, the big sellers. So if it's not able to reclaim pretty quickly right here, then there's a pretty good chance that it's gonna nuke, or it's gonna put in a decent down move at the least. We could also look at it as finding acceptance into this distribution area. So let me go ahead and fast forward here and see the volume. We didn't have that continuation there, but look at this. It's continuing. So when it goes pretty deep like that, I'm usually looking to sell the rip. So when it comes back, whether it's halfway or all the way, I'm going to sell that. The way you sell it, there's different nuances though, of course. You could be looking at the DOM, you could be looking at 15-second, you could look at tick charts, 1-minute charts, you could look at the volume profiles and see if you see a low volume node starting to form. Like let's say it started here, you could lean against 37 with a tight stop if it started there. So they stepped in so far a little pretty early here. We can see really strong selling again. So just non-stop strong selling bars on the 15-minute. Even this green bar has a strong wick above. So this is actually a bearish bar, so closing lower into its range. So this was kind of like a nice little structural flip. And then we tested above it, fell back below it. So and we had a volume spike right on this test above, which often is indicative of forced buying, stops getting ran for people who have tight stops here. The weak hands getting flushed out right there. So yeah, I really like these when we get like a flush forced buying and then we reclaim back below. I like to short those. Depends on the context though, but all the context is aligned right now. Below VWAP, way below opening range. Just clear directionality. We're below a major distribution, below prior day low. Just, so many things that are good to look at are stacked in favor of shorts right now. And see how the volume kind of shows up in a different way on these different time frames. It's a red bar on the 1 minute, barely a red bar with a strong wick above. But then it's kind of like a 2-bar sequence on the 15-second, high volume, and then that volume's still high, but it's starting to dissipate, and there's a little bit of a wick above, and then we close below. So that's a bearish sequence right there. And then we had sort of like a consolidation, it started compressing right into these lows. And then we get this little high volume push, like a little breakout on the micro level back test, and then it goes back up. And it tests right into some of these lows. It's a little bit of a dirty spot, and testing into this little rejection in this. So it's not always going to give us like an exact perfect spot to look at, but somewhere around like 60-20 to 22 would have been kind of the spot to look there. Or even like an early one around potentially 19, but especially like 20. So we want to see if these lows can hold. We had this spike here on this sell here, and we're seeing failure to follow through, and that was like right at the lows. So that's nice to see as well. Gives us a good idea of these inflection points. It's a really powerful way to combine, volume profile with the volume. Another thing I like a lot about that is you can use it on pretty much everything. So stocks and options and futures. Whereas, the DOM, I do like it, but you can only use it on, there's only so many markets that it's good on. I find that it's especially good on S&P futures. I find that it's better on that than anything, in my opinion. It's good on bond futures. It's good on YM, RTY. It's good on, it's pretty solid on crude oil and gold. Those are like the main markets that I think the DOM's pretty good on. I just like how much versatility you get from multi-timeframe analysis, volume, and then volume profile, though. You can use it on stocks and it works really well. Can't really use the DOM on stocks very well. You can use it, but the way that the orders are coming in and everything, it's just really, really messy. Volatile. I don't like the DOM on volatile markets. It can be really, really messy. With these more highly liquid futures markets, it works much better. It tends to be a lot better. Yeah, and so we can clearly see the acceptance, below this area. So I'm going to try to get it going now. Yeah, and so we can see, this was a key spot to watch. We have this very clear sign of a rejection right on the underside of this right here. Yeah, this is actually a spot where it was a little more clear on the 1 minute, actually. So the spot would have been like right at about 2050 roughly. And that's right where it came in and rejected. Well, I'm looking at that wrong. Oh, it rejected it like 2150-ish, so slightly into it, but that's really common. It'll go a little bit into it very often. Okay, we're seeing some signs here of rejection. So this is going to be an interesting spot right here as well. It's starting to look like we might get a reversal to the upside, but watch what happens here. Okay, we get this little volume spike and we're above it, but spending 15 seconds above key structure isn't, like this huge massive deal, especially when it's not that big of a move. If this moved way higher, that would be a little bit better, but we still want to see, some time spent and more volume. But it bounces on the back test, and look what it does. It fails to take that out. So it's never just enough to be above it. We want to, build a base or, want to back test and then take out that high right there. Especially with how, weak this was. It's not like it was a big move, like I was saying. And then we want to look at these lows, and see how it reacts here. Right away, we're getting this strong push on volume below that. So it's very bearish. So it's like we have the higher low, we barely put in a higher high. So we're struggling to put in these higher highs here. Now we put in a higher low, but That's not enough to tell us anything major as well, though. We can't just say, oh, there's this one 15-second bar after a higher low. We got to see it put in a decent low first below this little pivot, and preferably below this as well. So, this pivot low right here, and we got it. We're seeing signs that, they're both pulling bids, and buyers who chased up here, they're going to be stopping out below all these lows. They're going to be panic selling. We're seeing capitulating, and we can see just nonstop red bars on the 1 minute. So, and we get a shallow bounce and strong selling volume again. So, we're taking out these lows now. So, okay, we got a bounce. Yeah, so we're really seeing it struggle to put in lows now. See, it's kind of messy on lower time frames, but we can see it's descending, but the angle is not very sharp like it was up here. It's really starting to slow down. And we're starting to put in some higher highs and higher lows here on the micro time frame. So, it's just telling us that something has changed. And, this is always good to see right here. We have our structure here right at the lows, and we flush it, and we immediately pop back. And we flushed it on a high volume bar and immediately come back. Let me get this going a little here. Got a little bit of a compression. It's kind of like a volatility contraction pattern or a high tight flag, sort of, except it didn't have like a strong impulsive push into it. It's just kind of churning higher. Same kind of pattern though. But it breaks, fails to hold when it comes back and tests into it. Selling on high volume. So we're seeing a lot of indecision, but at the same time, we're seeing that, there's much more strength from buyers than there was earlier in the session. So, like once these strong flushes run their course, we'll often get like these slow churning moves that go up into VWAP and or recent structure and things like that. I can't even remember what the rejection spot was. Let's see. Okay, so we went above VWAP. Let's see what happens here. If I did go long there, I would actually be looking to take some profits or full exit at VWAP. Massive selling days don't typically just turn around. They don't typically do like a full turnaround and go way back up. So it does do a pretty decent flush above VWAP for going back below. Yeah, so that pretty much covers what I wanted to talk about. Hopefully there was some value in there for you though. But take care.